company number 7, second from last, is a company that received our lowest score for the day and for the week, which is Meta Systems, aka Facebook, trades under the NASDAQ ticker symbol FB, soon to be META. Tell us a little bit about it, mate. What did it report?
Yeah, so I mean, the revenue number that they reported was a pretty high revenue number for a company like of this, 33.67 billion versus 33.4 that was expected by analysts. It was a beat. Earnings per share, however, came in at 3.67 per share versus 3.84 expected. I think the stock took a huge hit, 20% plus, massive, 20% plus. When a $600 billion company falls by 20%, that's like $120 billion approximately. That's like a CBA plus wiped off in one day, just to put that into a context, right? So whether that happened, that's because their guidance for next year or next quarter implies that they're going to only grow between 3 and 11%. They're blaming Apple for about $10 billion revenue loss for the year. They're saying that the new iOS privacy changes is really hurting targeting. More and more people are saying, I do not want to be tracked when that thing pops in. That's not a surprise to me that people who wants to be tracked in their right mind, you don't want to be tracked. And it looks like they haven't made enough changes vis-a-vis other companies that are growing quickly in the same space, like Snapchat and TikTok. So one of the comments that Mark Zuckerberg made in the call is that they're having a hard time competing with TikTok in the short video format. They have a product called Reels. That is, it's again, one of the things I like to say in this space is if you're not innovating and producing new products, but you can't modify, nobody's going to associate Facebook or Instagram with Reels really, because that's TikTok, right? So if they had to innovate, they had to invent something like TikTok in a standalone app, not as a part of the same app, which people associate with something else. It's just how people's mindset works. And I think they have some challenges ahead, given regulation and so on. So it was a bit surprising because of their results compared with other people's results. Snap grew 40% plus this year, and they into advertising as well. But they do a more of brand advertising versus targeting advertising, which is what Facebook does. So I give it a D. Largely for a couple of reasons. One of the things, I put a Twitter poll out in which I asked, my question I asked is this the new Yahoo of the 2020s? And of course, 78% of the people, or something like that, 72% of people thought no. And I think what they were thinking is that, well, this company is going bankrupt. No, I don't imply this company is going bankrupt. It's actually not going to go bankrupt. But, people forget that Yahoo at its time, its peak of its revenue, was one of the largest software or companies' revenues at that time, around 2007 to 2008. It was then bought out by the companies, and something happened. It didn't die. It was founder run. It was started by Jerry Yang, who was from Stanford, an electrical engineering graduate from Stanford. So it's not like they didn't know stuff. But I just think that one of the issues with Facebook is this does not own its own destiny, because they're an application after all. Lots of people can develop applications. Applications can get to scale today very quickly because of virality of other platforms. So, and because they don't control the protocol stack or the technology stack, they are in many ways hamstrung by what happens elsewhere. So that's a big thing. The other thing that, so Zuckerberg has been a great capital allocator when it comes to buying things. Right. But whether or not Facebook has innovated enough within itself is a big question mark in my mind. I haven't seen them come up with the next Instagram, right? That's TikTok. They haven't come up with, they did try to buy Snap, but they didn't come up with Snapchat, right? Whereas innovation would mean that they would come up with those things and seed them and help grow them, right? That's one. People point to there being 2.8 billion people on their platforms put together, something like that, $3 billion. It's very hard to monetize those free users that you've got in the rest of the world in places like India. Advertising revenues, bulk of the advertising, the average revenue per user is all North America. If you slowly whittle that away, right? And network effects might appear to be strong, but this type of network effect can go away also very quickly. People forget that Yahoo had Yahoo Chat and Yahoo Room, and they had users, and they had email at that time. At that time, those would appear like strong network effects and strong reasons to exist, but stuff happens. So I give it a D for execution, mostly very poor execution on their part.
Yeah, I'm an owner of Facebook shares, and I got to admit it was a tough pill to swallow, because we saw like that it was foreshadowed the difficulties with privacy. I just didn't think they were as bad as what management kind of led us to believe. And I think what we've seen more recently is like this shift in power to Microsoft, to Apple, and to an extent to Google as well, and away from these pure advertising plays and businesses. Like we've seen growth in Snap and the like, but yeah, Facebook's had a younger generation or a younger demographic problem, and it's that innovation is also something that's interesting. I think some listeners wouldn't know that Facebook also owns WhatsApp and Instagram. It's not just the core Facebook brand, but the thing that has kind of caught me is that the business can't make the acquisitions. Like you've said, it can't make those social media acquisitions, because Facebook, quite frankly, is not very friendly with politicians and regulators. So it can't go out and just buy whoever it wanted, like it could in the past. There was actually something brought up by Matt Cochrane, your colleague, who he tweeted something which I thought was really interesting. Because of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard, which is its huge foray into the gaming space, trying to monopolize basically the vertical with Xbox and cross-platform. What Facebook could potentially do now is make a bid for another game developer, like, or publisher, like say Roblox or something that's more metaversy, trying to push into that space, because it would be very hard for regulators to block Facebook if they approve Microsoft's deal. So that's something that they may be able to wiggle through, but yeah, it's a pretty tough one. It's slowing growth. Those users have been slowing, even though it is massive. So there are levers it can pull, but interesting times for Facebook and for /Meta's shareholders.